Of questions being asked, and of course very many families trying to cope, families of survivors trying to move on, make sure that this is an attack that will not make them bow down. So in studio we have Ambassador Martin Kimani, Director of National Counter-Terrorism Center. Sir, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and allow me to start from the point where Duncan Kaimba left it, and he posed the question, why is Kenya so prone to attacks? I know we've had different explanations on this, so I'll pose it to you again. Why are we so prone to attacks?
Well, thank you for having me, Linda. And let me start by saying that we're thinking of those 148 students who are lost, the 2 guards and the 6 security officers. And a year has passed, but we still mourn them and regret that day. Now, in terms of your question, I think the security analyst had a very good series of answers. The number one is that the ideology of Al-Shabaab and Al-Qaeda is an ideology that means they have global ambitions. And those global ambitions must be perpetrated on the strongest countries that they can find. And in this region, Kenya is the most open country. It's a country with the most globalized economy. It's a country with the largest tourism industry, the largest diplomatic representation, the largest global business representation. So our very strength and the very things that are making our country get better are the reasons that Al-Shabaab and Al-Qaeda want to target us, because through us they can then advance their global ambitions.
So basically they're trying to make a statement.
They're trying to make a statement, and each of these attacks that are so tragic for our people are essentially a way to send that message, to send that ideological message. And that message is very simple.
So here's the thing, the ideology is still there, and one would ask the question, because you're the Director of National Counter-Terrorism Center, what essentially has changed within Garissa with respect to security? What has been put in place? What measures have been put in place after that attack?
Well, I heard some very good responses from the majority leader, I think, and a few other people in Garissa. We have strengthened our security in Garissa in terms of the patrols, the presence of the police and other security agencies. We are working harder to block entry by Al-Shabaab across our frontier. In other words, we're moving towards an integrated border management regime. We've increased the number of police officers very sharply. 10,000 in the last year and 10,000 more in the next few days, actually. So we're slowly managing to add manpower, technology, and methodology. And most importantly is the way the security agencies are working together. The amount of collaboration and integration is unprecedented in our history. And we are also working to input into the curriculums of all the security agencies advanced counterterrorism and counter-violent extremism training. So these new policemen who are being hired will have training that is very much geared towards them being more effective at combating terrorism.
In terms of fighting terrorism. So here's the thing, we haven't seen very many attacks in the last couple of months, which is a good thing for the country. And like you say, we've put in several measures to ensure that such an attack is not witnessed in the country. If you were to gauge, if you were to analyze the situation, would you say Kenya is winning the war on terror? How far have we gone as a country in terms of the war on terror?
Well, how far we've gone is, first, we've entered into a very sharp learning curve as a country. First within the government and within the security agencies. But I think the most important change has been the Kenyan people themselves deciding that, in fact, they are part of this fight. So the amount of information we're getting from the public, the amount of tips we're getting from the public has risen very sharply. And we have campaigns like Chonjo, which essentially, when we have information, we put it out, we put signboards, we put out social media, and the response has been very promising. And I think, Linda, it is that the terrorists, by trying to divide us along religious lines, have actually awoken a deep nationalism within Kenyans, a deep sense that it's not just that we have different religions, it's that we have a covenant. I heard the majority leader talk about that covenant that the president talked about.
Yes.
We have a covenant as a people to be together. And that covenant was actually forged fighting colonial domination.
Nationalism.
So when we have a terrorist who comes to Kenya, whose aim is to dominate us, who looks at us and says the way you live and who you are is to be attacked, I think the Kenyan people are responding by saying, no, we will not agree to that. And this is not the first time we've done this. And I like to remind every Kenyan, if this country was able to defeat an empire for its independence, why would Al-Shabaab believe that they will ever succeed in bowing us?
That is the question that is on the mind of so many people. So earlier on in the day, I spoke to a security analyst. He's called Abdiwahab Sheikh, and he linked the number of attacks that we have and the incidences that we've seen to the stability in Somalia. And these were his sentiments that we need to come together as a region to be able to sort out Somalia. That is the only way we can end terrorism in the region. But then he also pointed out the fact that there are vested interests from different African countries with respect to restoring peace in Somalia, basically saying we don't have one voice, quote unquote. Would you share those sentiments? How do we work around it to ensure that we first sort out Somalia, make sure it's a stable country?
Well, I think that's an excellent question. You know, the first thing is to understand that the African Union mission in Somalia is a model that globally is quite rare. If you look at the killings and the mass violence in the Middle East, in West Africa, in the Afghanistan-Pakistan region, you find that regional responses are actually quite weak, and a lot of regions are trying to actually come together to fight terrorist groups together. So the fact that the African Union is able to bring together a multinational group of countries to fight Al-Shabaab is the first accomplishment. In terms of the issue of countries having different interests, I think countries are very focused on the threat of Al-Shabaab, because Al-Shabaab is not merely a phenomenon that is attacking Kenya. It wants to dominate everybody. So I think there's a concentration of minds there. But I think the analyst has a point in saying, is the international community doing enough? Because the AMISOM force is not there just to represent Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, Djibouti. It's actually there as part of a UN Security Council resolution. So we think the global community can do more. And we want to see the European Union, the United States, and all these other countries doing more. And especially countries in the Middle East assisting as well, because they're also
What sort of assistance would they offer?
Well, the assistance we need is actually twofold. One is that the AMISOM needs more force multipliers. The fact is, after the UN Security Council called for attack helicopters to be given to AMISOM, they're very slow in coming. And so the equipment needs of AMISOM alone, AMISOM has brave men and women fighting and have cleared Al-Shabaab out of a vast amount of the territory that it used to occupy. But that success has to be sustained with certain equipment, and so we see budget cuts coming in from certain international partners, and we don't think this is very helpful. The second part of the formula, I think President Kenyatta spoke about it in Djibouti, which is that we want to encourage the Somali people and the Somali political class to take advantage of the fact that AMISOM is there. We are bleeding and fighting on behalf of stability in Somalia, and we need the political class to take up its responsibility to drive the political process forward in a way that brings stability. Ultimately, it's the Somali people who suffer the most from Al-Shabaab, and ultimately it's the Somali people who need to stabilize and take possession of their country.
Before I let you go, how optimistic are you that we will win this war on terror as a country, as a region?
I am extremely optimistic. Kenya is a strong country. The covenant that binds us together, I think, is exemplified by Salafara, and I know you know who that is. That man sought to defend his fellow Kenyans and died in the course of it. A country that has people like that is not a country that's going to be defeated by terrorists.
All right. Thank you so much, Ambassador Martin Kimani, Director of National Counterterrorism Center, for speaking to us on Weekend Prime, for helping us to understand the strides that we make as a country with respect to the war on terror. All Kenyans obviously are hopeful that we will not see any other attack on our soil again.
Thank you, Linda.
So much.
Thank you.